Slavery wasn't just chains and fields. Behind closed doors, it took even darker forms. Here are the darker secrets of slavery. Number 5. She hid in the shadows for 7 years to escape a master who wouldn't let her go. She was hunted, not for escape, but for control. Harriet Jacobs was born into slavery in 1813. Her master didn't want her in the fields. He wanted to own her body. Relentlessly pursued, threatened, and harassed, Harriet refused to become his property in every way, so she vanished, into a crawl space. For 7 years, she hid in an attic barely 9 feet long and 3 feet high. No light, no heat, no freedom, just hope. She couldn't stand upright, could barely move. But from that space she watched her children grow, never revealing herself, never giving in. Eventually she escaped north. And she didn't stay silent. In 1861 she published Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, exposing the brutal truths of slavery from a woman's perspective, the abuse, the terror, and the resistance. Harriet Jacobs didn't just survive, she wrote herself into history, a mother, a fugitive, an abolitionist, and a voice that slavery could not silence. Number 4. Some women weren't sold for work, but for something far darker. They were known as the fancy girls of New Orleans, enslaved black women sold not for labor, but for exploitation. Traders marketed their beauty, dressing them in fine clothes and parading them through auction blocks where wealthy white men bid for control of their lives. These women were forced into relationships often promised freedom or social standing in exchange for obedience, but the reality was a life of exploitation and vulnerability. Some were sent to secret brothels, others kept as mistresses in so-called placage arrangements, where power always lay in the hands of their enslavers. Their suffering reveals a darker side of slavery, one where human beings were stripped of dignity and reduced to objects of desire. Though their names are rarely remembered, the story of the fancy girls exposes the cruel intersections of race, gender, and power in America's past. Do you think the stories of the fancy girls should be taught more openly in schools? Number 3. When importing slaves was banned, a new and horrifying system took its place. After the U.S. banned the transatlantic slave trade in 1808, a horrifying industry rose in its place: slave breeding farms. Particularly in Virginia and Maryland, enslaved women were forced to bear children not for family, but for profit. Their bodies became tools of production. Slaveholders handpicked strong, obedient men, sometimes called studs, to father as many children as possible. These men were not sent to the fields. Instead, they were kept healthy, clean, and well-fed, used purely for reproduction. Enslaved women had no choice. Their pregnancies weren't seen as new lives, but new assets. Children born into this system were sold, traded, or raised to become laborers themselves. Some women were forced to give birth to over 10 children, not for love, but to grow a master's wealth. These breeding farms didn't disappear overnight. They left scars on descendants, on families torn apart, and on a nation still wrestling with its past. It only ended when slavery itself was abolished in 1865, with the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Number 2. Not all were forced to work the fields. Some were forced into something even more unthinkable. This man's life was defined not by freedom but by the cruel economics of slavery. Known as Big Jake of Virginia, he was chosen for one reason alone: his body. Tall, strong, and imposing, he was forced into the role of a stud, valued only for his ability to father children. Jake was spared the brutal field labor that broke so many others, but his existence was no less violent. Enslaved men forced into this role were often paired with multiple women at a time, depending on the size of the plantation and the owner's ambitions. Jake was forced into hundreds of pairings over the years, women who had no choice, their bodies and futures controlled by enslavers who saw them as breeding stock. Jake himself had no choice either, his dignity stripped away, reduced to a tool for profit. Like the infamous Pata Seca in Brazil, Big Jake's story reveals the darkest side of slavery, where human lives became commodities, and even the most intimate bonds were manipulated for gain. If this shocked you, know that Big Jake's story is just one of many. Follow for more untold histories of humanity. Number 1. One man's body was turned into a weapon of profit, used over and over again. This man was enslaved and forced into a life where his sole purpose was reproduction. Standing at an impressive 2.18 meters tall, highly intelligent and obedient, he was seen as the ideal breeder. Known as Pata Seca, he was purchased specifically to father children who would strengthen his master's labor force. Unlike other enslaved individuals, he was not subjected to manual labor. Instead, he was given preferential treatment, well-fed, regularly checked for diseases, and shielded from harsh physical tasks. His only duty was to impregnate enslaved women. His owner even profited by renting him out to others for the same purpose. Over time, he fathered more than 200 children, many inheriting his strength and intellect, yet they too were born into slavery. When Brazil finally abolished slavery in 1888, he was granted a plot of land by his former master. Later he found love and built a family, having 9 children with his wife. Which story surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments.